Okay.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This will be an exciting year, 2025.
2025 is another exciting year for us, but certainly an Italian year.
Hopefully, if all goes well.
So we are creating this video because we had a lot of inquiries about what we're doing in purchasing a house in Italy, and we thought the best way to answer it was to create a video. And first, I think it's important to say that we are not experts in purchasing Italian real estate. We are just in the beginning processes of dealing with the Italian bureaucracy, the legal requirements that have to be addressed, and there are multiple channels on YouTube that deal with this with far more expertise than we do. So the all I can say is that this is our experience. This is what we're going through, and this is our story. And so we have made a provisional offer on a home. There are some contingencies, and we will speak to that in the future or in a future video. So first, who we are? We're two Americans. We've been living in Europe in various countries for the over 10 years now at this point. What's causing this idea of buying Italian property is we wanted to find a place that was a little warmer. At the moment, we're in Ireland, where we're enjoying ourselves very much. Our youngest is finishing high school, and our oldest is finishing university, and we have other children also living some in Europe and some still in the U.S. We have purchased property in the U.S. and purchased property in Poland, but this is our Italian journey, or our Voyaggio Italiano. So one of the things that we have been asked about is how realtors work in Italy, and the realtors represent the sellers. But even though that's the case, you still have to do most of the work. We You can engage a real estate facilitator. Thank you, and who can help identify houses, help you with the process, compile information, even see houses for you. And we did look into that, and we thought about it, but because we're here in Europe, we decided we would do this process on our own. So we did not engage anyone to do that.
So you're pretty much left with using online tools to search for houses, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well.
Right. So searching online was the only way we're able to identify a house to look at. We had made an offer previously on a home that was never formally accepted, or that the realtor never actually showed the seller our offer. And that's a little different than the process that we had experienced in the U.S., where it's more of a process where it's like a bidding process, where people who are looking at a property will make bids and they bid back and forth. We never got a chance. They never even saw our offer. We never even heard what the other offers were. So we learned from that experience in that sense as well.
Well, that basically whoever gets to see the house first really has first right of refusal, if you will, or be the first ones to put a bid in before they really entertain anybody else.
At least that's been our experience. Yep. Right. We found that realtors don't cooperate with each other, so we had to contact them separately. It's in the U.S. There's listing, there's MLS, and they will work with each other because they split fees. We're not clear exactly how the realtors work in Italy, but that there was no communication between different realtors. It didn't pay to say to a realtor looking at one house, well, we're also looking at a house in this other area.
Yeah.
They're not going to help us.
And it really comes down to that there's two portals that everyone kind of gets recommended to. There are a couple other smaller ones, I guess. Like you can look for a higher end home website or whatever specific you're looking for. But generally, there's two, and that's idealista.it or immobiliare.it.
Yeah.
And you can go to those websites and you put in the criteria, how much you want to pay, how big, how many bedrooms, but it's still not really great because, for example, we really wanted a what they call a detached home, which is a standalone home. But many of the filters were still bringing us these semi-detached homes, which is usually there's another house literally attached to the same wall, so you're sharing a wall and a roof with somebody else, or on both sides, or however it is. So even though you use these websites, they do tend to not give you exactly what you're looking for. And lastly, um, you'll find that the realtors, this is Kat, by the way. Kat's moving with us, and she's very affectionate. Anyway, so the other one is that you find that these realtors aren't even using those two websites as their only source of houses because they also have their own websites. And maybe it's because they have to pay for the houses that they show on these portals or whatever, but they have certainly a bigger selection on their own websites than even they do on these two portals. So you end up having to do a lot of homework, whether it's between the between oh my god, you have to get down. You have to get, you still end up having to go do a lot of homework on a bunch of different websites and spend hours looking for what you want.
Who are you talking to? So also we discovered that the online photos didn't always reflect the houses really well.
Rarely, actually.
Yes, we found that they were sometimes really terrible quality. They didn't show all the rooms. They were poorly laid out, so it was hard to follow where all the rooms in the house were. They didn't always show the facades of the house. Um, Sometimes there were strange angles, so it didn't really make sense in understanding what was we were looking at. And sometimes people's personal items were spread around the house. Cat's getting let out of the room, and that and because of that, it obscured aspects of the house. Also, people, there were a lot of people's stuff in it. In the U.S., they stage houses
Yep.
and they hire professionals to
Photograph them
video
even, yeah.
and photograph the houses. We didn't see
Any of
much
that,
of that,
yeah.
at least not in the range of the houses we were looking at.
So the communication with the realtors is also quite difficult, particularly if you're a non-Italian speaker. Many don't respond to the online chats, and the requests via text or WhatsApp aren't always answered.
Office numbers, there wasn't a
Yeah,
clear person to contact. Also, they didn't always; those numbers didn't necessarily. People wouldn't accept, online like a WhatsApp
yeah. Now, even those
request to chat.
yeah, those portals also give you a way to communicate with the realtor about the property, but I don't. I think once we got a response using that, so it's difficult, and part of it is also language barriers, and they may feel intimidated if they don't speak English very well to want to communicate with you. So often it was down to translation
Although
apps.
most of our communication that way worked for us, whether it was email or through text messages, were done through the an Italian communication uh, app. And I speak some Italian. I speak enough to be able to get shown a house, but and we have complex questions, and we really had to rely on those apps to get them answered.
And we're lucky and fortunate that you actually have family in Italy,
Yes.
so that when we were really stuck, we were able to ask them to schedule appointments for us and so forth directly in Italian, which was immensely useful.
And we're very, very, very grateful for all the help that they provided us
Yeah.
to help us find a house.
So the other piece of the communication is that when visiting these houses, these realtors sometimes, well, they'll always ask you when they see through the translator app that the Italian's not perfect in your communication. They'll ask you if you speak Italian, and our answer has generally been a little bit we understand. So they'll try to bring a friend or a colleague or even sometimes a family member who speaks some English to kind of come along and kind of facilitate the viewing, which is, by the way, very charming. And
Yes.
they definitely are trying to communicate and work with you.
Yes.
I always feel like I'm the one that's deficient in this moment because I should be speaking better and be more communicative in the country I'm trying to move to, but we'll be working on that. But yeah, so we use often even our phones to translate something if we didn't understand something perfectly and show it to them, and you make it work.
Yeah. No, we made it work.
Yeah.
We pretty much understood what was being conveyed.
So the other piece is we don't live there at the moment. Right now we're in Ireland, and so being able to schedule and seeing houses, is time consuming, and it gets expensive too because flights, car rentals,
Hmm.
hotels are associated with all this. And what makes you feel a little uncomfortable when you're doing this is you almost have to like buy your airfare. And then when you have that, about a week before you arrive is only when you're able to start booking
Hmm.
appointments because the realtors aren't able to schedule this a month out. They don't even know if the house will be available. And that actually happened once to us that I had a booked appointment. And then about 2 days before we arrived, they said that the house is already under contract. So it doesn't even make much sense to do it much in advance. So there's a commitment you're making that's a little uncomfortable with buying airfare and then being able to book your
But
appointments.
we have the advantage of being living in Europe that there's low cost airfare.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the low cost airfare works, it's just if you buy the tickets in advance, it's very cheap. But as the planes fill up, the prices go up as well considerably. So it's not like you could say let's go next. Well, we have a free week, and or let's go fly to Italy, and that becomes very expensive. Where
Yep.
it's if we're saying let's go in 2 months, it's extremely inexpensive.
And the other challenge is, there's a lot of hype and a lot of media right now around foreigners buying properties in Italy.
Particularly Americans, I think,
Well, I see in a lot
and
of
and
places,
UK too.
but and it makes a lot of these realtors a little skeptical
Mm.
of, are you really serious or are you just taking a look because it's kind
It's
of
like a
a
tourism.
tourism thing, like real estate tourism or something.
Hmm.
So they're not, they don't want to have their time. They don't want to waste their time. We even had a house that we really, really wanted to see, where the realtor basically said that if we were serious, we had to pay him €20 just to be able to see the property.
Yeah.
At that point, we were a little put off by that.
Yes.
So we ended up driving by the property just to even see whether we truly were interested, not to waste our money and time. But we ended up not actually seeing that property
Right.
because for other reasons, it wasn't going to meet our needs. But it gets a little complicated.
So a lot of the houses we saw, I call them nonna houses or grandmother houses, and what they are is people who are either moved on to assisted living, or have passed away, or want to sell their houses in order to get into an assisted living. And these houses are full of someone all the accumulated things that people have in life. I mean, all of it, all the little knickknacks.
Potentially also
Uh,
multi-generational.
Right, and I think this is my opinion. I think what happens is their children are also getting older, and they're also accumulating things. This is a product of Italian longevity, and they have no place for these items. As well as a lot of these houses have really large, big pieces of furniture. Some of them beautiful pieces, but there's no you can't take that piece of furniture and find a convenient corner to tuck it into.
Yep.
We actually met one seller who had purchased a house like that, and they had told us that they had to empty the house at a great expense
Yep.
to them in order to get the house to so they could bring their stuff into the house.
And they actually kind of use that as part of the cost of them now selling the house, that
Right.
it's actually been already cleared
Right.
of all the belongings of a previous owner who may have lived there for 50, 60 years.
Right. Um, so again, some of these pieces I think we mentioned are really very, very large, and while they're beautiful pieces, they may not fit into the decor that we were hoping
Yep.
uh, to have at the house. So we have to look at these houses and think about what kind of expense that was as well. We saw some beautiful houses and beautiful locations, but they had problems. older houses, a lot of times what we found was, again, we should say our price range is a modest price range. So we would find houses that people are selling where the core house had been added on over years. Some of these houses were, I don't know, 100, 150, 200 years old. But as they added on, they didn't sort of redesign the house. They just added another couple of rooms and then a couple of more rooms. So you had very awkward stairways that went up to, up to
Second floor.
second floor. I was going to say first floor, but to a floor. And it didn't seem to make sense. Windows that opened onto hallways, because at one time that was the outside of the house. And a lot of the house was laid out in a very illogical sense. And that was something that we saw, and we had to sort of decide, is that something that we would find acceptable, having this sort of mismatched house that was built over maybe the course of a century. Um,
But it's not necessarily difficult to make changes to the interior of the house if you want to spend the money, and that's part of your equation of thinking about how much you're buying a house for versus how much you're going to put into to updating or doing what you want with it. Um, but the doing any work on the exterior of these houses becomes another separate issue,
yes.
which you
Did
often
you,
may need permissions, and getting permissions from the city
the
hall, town
local,
hall, or whatever is probably going to be quite a bureaucratic undertaking and
and add a lot of time.
time. And if it is deemed, for example, a historic property for whatever reason, then you may not be able to make any changes to the exterior.
That's right. It
Actually,
can be denied after months of trying to negotiate.
right. So what do we avoid?
We avoided busy streets, houses, and there were so many beautiful houses that were built probably on quiet streets, which are now uh,
Major
busy, yeah,
thoroughfares, yeah,
thoroughfares.
yeah.
We avoided houses that were near industrial operations, and that we found that happened, every once in a while. We didn't want overly remote locations because we had other criteria that we wanted to look at. And then the other thing that we found some beautiful, beautiful houses, but the cost to modernize or stabilize them was, we just in the envelope sort of estimate, was greater than the actual purchase price of the house.
Yeah.
And we avoided that because not just the economic cost, but there's a time consideration. Like how long could we work on a house? So that was another aspect that went into our calculus.
The things around the busy streets or the industrial operations that may or may not be currently running, these are the things you would never see on these portals or in the
Yes.
photos. So what we found is that the first thing we had to do is we found even something we were interested through these portals is go to Google Maps, look at the area, see if we were even interested, and that didn't necessarily give you a full feel either. I mean, a good example is that one house that you saw that actually was stunning in terms of the backyard and the house, and it had this cute little secondary little cottage like just in the backyard that was separate.
Mm.
But then when you got there, you realized that there's kind of a hill to the side, and on top of that hill was a big industrial building, which
Which
was,
wasn't being used,
but you'll
but
be
there's
looking
no
at it.
guarantee that in a year that someone may purchase it and restart an industry there.
Not to mention kind of ruin the views.
Yeah, a little bit. So we reduced the house selection into a formula. And what we did was, we mentioned this on another video, but we called it the three L's and the three H's. So the three L's, so location, location, location. The first one was we wanted a house that was accessible by walking. We did not have to drive a car, to some simple amenities. We're thinking into the future. And it can be just a place to shop, or what I like to term it is, could I get up and walk and get a cup of coffee, or a cappuccino in the morning? So that was one L. The second L was a proximity to a metropolitan center,
Yes.
and we've been looking in and around in the Piedmont, around
Biella.
Biella.
Mhm.
So that was the other one. Someplace so we could go to restaurants, we could find entertainment.
and usually it's also tied with some public transportation, which is also important to us. I mean, we obviously need to have a car, but if car would break down for a second, would we have another way to get around and get things done? So we really wanted something that was giving us a nice balance and a backup, if you will.
And the third L is something that we very subjective, and that is, well, not subjective. It was is the house isolated, and what we mean by that is not necessarily remote, but that if we sat in our house, did we feel we were in our own house? It was somewhat removed from the
People couldn't see into the windows
right,
easily, and the backyard kind of felt a little private as well. That people would have walked by and just looked
right.
straight in, for example.
So that was the second L.
Third L.
The third L. And then the three H's, we thought was the house move in? Or could we move in? And the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to be able to move in and renovate while we were living in the house. We didn't want to have to make it ready to move in. So, and so we're to sort of end this short video. Hopefully, we will create some more videos of what we're doing, what's going on, and we'll share them as well. We ask if people like what we're doing or want to find out more of what we're doing to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll go through the process of the house and converting the house as well.
Well, first we have a long way to go
There is
signing still a final contract and actually
Yes.
closing on the house, and we'll keep you updated on that as well.
So thank you very much. And again, thank you for tuning in and spending the time to watch this video.